Hey, Deliberate Leaders. I am your host, Allison Dunn, executive coach and founder of the Deliberate Leaders podcast, dedicated to helping leaders build strong, thriving businesses. Each episode, we feature inspiring interviews to help you on your leadership journey. Today's guest is Dr. Bob Nelson. He is the author of 101 Ways to Engage Employees and
1001.
I'm sorry, 1,000. Thank you. The other one's even harder. It's
101 is the first chapter.
All in the first chapter. 1,001 Ways to Engage Employees, as well as the author of 1,501 Ways to Reward Employees. He's been featured on CNN, MSNBC, NPR, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and I could go on and on. He is the president of Nelson Motivation, Inc., which is a management training and consulting company that specializes in helping organizations improve management practices, programs, and systems. And then you have a very impressive list of clients, including IBM, American Express, Hallmark, the U.S. Army. I mean, go Army. Dr. Bob Nelson, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I always like to kick off these episodes with a quick, deliberate conversation. And so my ask is, what is your number one leadership tip for our audience today?
Well, sure. That's easy. Thank people when they do a good job. I don't care what you're paying them. I don't care how long they've worked for you. If someone does a good job, thank them. There you go. We're done.
And that doesn't cost anything at all, right?
Amazing. In fact, all the top motivators don't cost anything. From my research, it starts with that, thanking people for doing a good job, but also ask them for their ideas and opinions, how we can improve things around here, how we can save money, which they tend to know more because they're closer to their job than you are. If you have a decision to make, ask for their input. Even if you are making the final decision, it'll be a better decision if you have their input, and it'll be more easily implemented. If they two-way communication, again, if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, get it and get back to them. There you go. And if they make a mistake, and everyone makes mistakes, instead of criticizing them in front of their peers, embarrassing them, maybe try taking a breath and saying, I'm not sure I would have done it the same way, but what'd you learn from that? That could be the best training we've done all year with you. I'm glad you made that mistake. That momentary pause to cut off you proving you're the smartest person in the room and take the long-term view of the relationship with that employee can serve you for years, and they will value it, and they will value you, because most managers don't do that. There you go. That's my top 5 or 6. Haven't spent a dime yet.
I love that. It does.
There's an icing on that one. Bill Gates, former chairman and CEO of Microsoft, once said the biggest mistake anyone, no, he didn't say that one. He said how you handle mistakes is the biggest predictor of your long-term success of any organization, is what he said. So
how you handle mistakes is your long-term predictor of what?
Of success.
Success.
As a company. Okay. Not just,
for sure.
Oh, yeah, in that relationship, but as a company, if that's who you are, you constantly get the better from people. You get people being willing to talk openly and give you feedback and not be guarded and hide problems from you because you react, and then you don't know what's going on as the company is going under. So there you go.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. Those are some awesome.
Shortest podcast you ever had, right there.
No, I have more questions. I didn't include it in the introduction, and before I actually, my intel said that maybe you're the coach to Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. Is that true?
I am indeed. He
Okay.
asked me to be his coach. I laughed, and he said, "No, I'm serious." I go, "Marshall, you're the #1 executive coach in the world." He goes,
Yeah.
"Yeah, and I'd like you to coach me, and you could tell people you coach me." And, okay, and his check cleared, so
Yeah.
off we
So
go.
in the coaching world, like that's so like it's like you know what I mean? You're the one who teaches the one, right?
Yes, I'm the guy behind the guy.
I love that. So I forgot to give you that props in the beginning. I had a fantastic interview with Marshall.
He's a
Maybe,
treasure, isn't he?
yeah, this past fall, and it ranks up there as to one of my favorite, just authentic conversations. And he is who he is, and it's pretty amazing. So you get to coach him. I am just uber impressed. So,
Which mainly is me, listening.
of course.
The most important thing one person can do for another is to listen, and
Mhm.
often just playing back what he said, and occasionally saying, "Is you really think that's the best strategy?" Well, and so we all need a sounding board,
Yeah.
but he also, I actually, when we did that, I was kind of going, well, why did this happen? How, it's completely out of the blue, and and he's never, I don't know if I've ever, I don't know, I've intuited from that one of the reasons might be because um, he's sold about 1.5 million books, um, and I've sold over 5 million. So I think one of them is I'm obviously doing something he's not doing, and so he can learn from that. So we talk books, and I review his next book out kind of thing and give him feedback as well. So it's multiple levels, but he's definitely a joy, and I'm glad I have him in my life.
That's awesome. That's such a great story. So let's talk about your book. So the tie back to me and how you and I have gotten connected today is that I used both your 1001 ways to engage employees and your 1501 ways to reward employees as a feature learning tool for an engineering firm that I ran that was very focused on creating an employee focused culture and an employee ownership type culture. And
Cool.
your tools were basically the model that we won awards on, frankly. So thank
All
you.
right, good to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, you
Um,
bet. So
it's funny because it's kind of common sense. I travel on common sense, but it was Voltaire in the 17th century who first said common sense is typically not common practice in
that's
most of
beautiful.
us.
That's a great quote. Common sense is not typically common practice.
Yes, and that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And so I'd worked for a couple corporations, and I knew this topic of reinforcement, recognition, thanks, um, was powerful, and overwhelming evidence. We've got 400 studies that say you get what you reward, what you inspect, what you recognize, what you incentivize, you will get. It's a fact. And
Yes.
you'll get that in any relationship in your life, by the way. And
Yes.
I kind of looked around where I was working, and how come no one does this? How come leaders don't do it? How come managers don't do it?
Yeah.
And that was my question. That was my question in my doctoral dissertation. I said, I want to know, we know this stuff works. Why do some managers do it and other managers don't? And I did a 3-year study just to answer that one simple question. I looked at examined 67 national organizations, and each one found managers that did recognition in the same organization, managers that didn't had a 3-way validation, including self-report and direct reports and organizational sponsor. And then I got these 2 groups, doers and non-doers, on this simple behavior. And then I looked at 167 potential variables that differentiate those 2 groups. That was took me a year to set it up. And then I was able to get a deep dive on why that happens or doesn't happen. You want to know what I learned?
What did you learn?
Well, you're gonna have to write a check, What I learned that for those managers that don't do it, they had a long laundry list of why they didn't do it. Starting with they didn't started with they didn't know how to do it well. I really don't. How do you recognize someone that's supposed to hug them? I don't get it. You know. Followed by they didn't think it was as important as I just indicated. Followed by they don't really have time to do this. You know, I've got a job to do. I can't be constantly telling people how great they are. You know, and then by the way, no one does it for them. So when they start getting it, they'll start giving it,
Right.
and they're afraid they might leave someone out, and on, a whole laundry list, kind of like a list of excuses from my perspective. But for those managers that did use recognition, there was none of that. There was just one variable, and those people that used recognition had internalized the importance of that principle, where it was part of who they were. All our behavior stems from our beliefs. So if you want to change a behavior, start with changing your belief about that behavior. And they had done that, and so they to a person said, well, if I'm managing other people, I'm in charge of the motivational environment. HR is not doing it for me. The CEO is not going to do it. I have to do it. So I got to start paying attention to what does it take to motivate people. And when you do that, you get into asking and listening, and man, you're off on the right track, and you're going to be a great leader. I have a lot of times new managers will ask me, what should I do as a new manager? Well, I'll tell you definitely what not to do. It's like, well, you got the job, so now I got to prove I'm the smartest person in the room. So I'm gonna be critical of everything and everybody. And so they bring me their work, and it's never good enough. And then I'm gonna often take back an assignment because they got it wrong. I'll do it for them. And then you're not gonna have a need for them at all because they're all getting their resume ready, getting out of here. Instead, you take a new job, and for the first week, just ask questions. Interview everyone's going to report to you, and what do you think most needs to be done around here? And get all that, and take that body of knowledge and prioritize it, and take the top thing that most people said, this is what we really need to have happen, and make that happen. And maybe it's an investment in software. Maybe it's and go to your boss who put you in this job and say, listen, you thought I could do this job. I need your support to make it happen. You say for 3 years you said it's not in the budget. You need to make this happen to support me in this job. And then you get the software funding, and then all the people working for you go, oh my God, this is the guy. This is the woman. He can actually make stuff happen that helps us. The previous three managers, they just said, well, budgeting's in November, and it's, I can't promise anything. Well, what good are you? Go to bat for us. You want to make a case with your employees. Go to bat for them, and they will notice, and they will value, and you'll be on the short list. There's only one out of every 4 or 5 managers any of us will have in our career. 1 out of 4 or 5 that we think are a good manager, a good leader. Be that person. And when you do that, you're going to come back to the soft side of the job in every case. You're going to come back to the interpersonal interactions, how you view and treat people is going to be on top of the list. There you go. Now that's your podcast.
Absolutely. One of the things that I'll share, just completely reinforces what you've just said is, at the time I was using these tools, I was encountering things like, can I give engineers like handwritten notes? Can I have cupcakes in the lunchroom? Can I, do an award? And it's like, I was trying to find things that would be okay to do, because honestly, I wasn't sure. I was a female in a very male-dominated office, trying to bring this culture of engagement and appreciation and growing the business, because we were all owners in it. And how do you educate around that and create just a rewarding, high engagement office?
Yes, and you're trying to lead by example, which is
yes,
good.
Yeah, and so 2,502 ways to do that. So.
And what was your response you got?
We We were an award-winning small company. We were recognized on a statewide basis. We were recognized on a regional and a national level by the government. So, and we kicked butt. We were good at
All
it.
right.
Yeah.
And so, to what degree was that softer side of things an element in that transformation?
I believe it was 80-20. In the sense of that you have to have the softer side to drive the harder side of we had better profitability, we had people were getting bonuses, but it really was the relationship. Why did people want to do that? And we'll reward them for creating that. They work harder for you, for sure. So
excellent. There you go. And you can't really buy that either.
You can't.
Because some men say, well, I'll just pay. I've had people say my boss, every time I talk to him about my workload or whatever, he says, well, I gave you a raise, and he goes, I want a life, I don't want a raise, or whatever. It's sort of like, listen to me, because I remember an interview with a reporter from the Kansas City Star, and she said and she was a workforce reporter, and she said, I tell my boss, I love my job, I'm happy with my job, I don't want a promotion, I don't want more money. And he says, I don't believe you. Everybody wants, you want what I had. No, it's like, listen, shut up and listen, and then believe what people are saying, It's, I guess that's harder for more people to know. And actually, it could be hard for me to do too, especially when you have a strong opinion on something.
Most business owners do.
You want to argue, you want to argue instead of and so I'm working with a high tech company now that 35,000 employees, and it's man, oh man, all the stuff that remember I started with saying this is all easy, it's common sense. It is not easy. It is not common sense for someone that doesn't see it or believe it. And I remember the person that made it to the executive team to talk about doing all this stuff. She was literally laughed out of the room. Snide comments, and, it's fun and games and this and that. And she brought me in to talk to them. Nobody laughed because I got the goods. I got I've got my own research. I've got the facts. I did my dissertation with Peter Drucker. I mean, I can answer any question. It's sort of they suddenly took a turn and started to hear something that it was easier for them to laugh at and dismiss. And once they did, then you start to get progress, and then we built on that. So it's a longer journey than when I started this whole journey, when my rewards book came out 25 years ago, I thought, well, I'll do this for a year or two, and then do something else. And man, it's just how hard can it be but if you're entrenched in your view that's reinforced by everyone else with the same view, business is serious. We don't have time for fun and games. And in this case, I'm talking about, it was, all engineers, and it's a high tech company. And by the way, they're 90% Asian or Indian. And so, they're quick to dismiss this American concept of you gotta make people feel good and do that on the weekend, It's
right.
But I will say, we're working through the weekend right now, so I'd like to do that on the weekend.
I know that engineers get a bad rap, but and you think that they're a nut you can't crack, but that is just false.
Here, I'll give you an engineering story.
Just as much as everyone else.
First book, I was working with Hewlett Packard, and I heard tell a story of a senior software engineer burst into his manager's office one day. He said, "You won't believe it. I finally found that software bug. I've been working on it for weeks." His software manager, knowing the importance of a timely recognition, wanted to do something then and there, not the end of the month or end of the quarter, heaven forbid end of the year. That's ancient history in any fast-moving organization. This manager literally gropes around on his desk, hands the senior software engineer a banana from his lunch with the words, "Great job, I knew you could do it." Now, I'm not sure how you feel if someone you were working with gave you a banana and it's kind of a joke. It wasn't a joke to that engineer. He showed everybody, went to the office, showing everyone the banana the boss gave me and why. and it took on a life and a story, as things tend to do. Now in that division of Hewlett Packard, Sunnyvale, California, 17 years later, the most prestigious award, recognition for technical achievement, is the Golden Banana Award. Not the same banana. They retired that puppy, and and that's the second. So one, try, experiment, and get in the game. But secondly, when something works, work with it to make more out of it. They took that one simple thing and they said, well, how can we build on this? They created a lapel pin of a banana that you were given if you were made it to the honor roll of being in the club, and you could wear it on your name tag, and everyone go, oh, you're one of, I didn't realize, you've paid your dues here. Yes, well, thank you. I try, and so, but it took off, and then and you work with it, you build it, and if you involve people along the way, you'd be more likely to be on the mark. And there you go, off you go. And now it's 3 podcasts here in one. Okay.
Awesome.
I'm giving away all my secrets.
Oh, you know what? I read all your secrets. This is still a really fun conversation.
Yes. It's the, I got actually a commentary on that, because people say, I know, like I move a lot of books. I like doing that because it's kind of an extension of my beliefs. So it's an extension of me. So it's really important for me to whatever I do to have books be a part of it. And I remember I did this goes back 22 years ago. I did an article for American Bookseller magazine about how to sell books, move books, and I a lot of strategies and a lot of stories. And I remember my publisher at the time, the head of marketing, said, why would you want to share all your secrets with other people? And I said, well, it's not the secret that makes it happen. It's doing the secret. and it takes effort and work and time. And that's where most people drop off. They're not willing to do that. They're not willing to. So, in the instance of what we're talking about, to treat employees right, and, that sounds messy, and they're going to have different motivations, and I got to check in with them at different frequencies, and then I got to decide each time what to do. Let's just give everyone gift cards. And then you start with that, and you initially, that was a nice thing, and then, well, let's give them the gift card when they all finish the project. So we'll do it every 2 months. Everyone gets a gift card, and if you're new to the team and you just started, you get a gift card. Why did I get this for? Well, you're on the team. If you did a lot more than your job, you still get the gift card. So
right.
You basically
right.
you are taking the air out of the thing, and I'd rather you not do it than to do it. I worked for Ken Blanchard for 10 years. He used to call that jelly bean motivation. That's when you do the same thing for everybody, and you kind of spread it out to everyone. And that's what happens in organizations. It's like, well, we get 85% of organizations right now, everybody gets the same percentage increase. And it may be, I don't know what it is right now, but maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 1%, but whatever that number is, 85% of employees get the same thing. So if you have a sense of, well, we pay for performance, look again, because in any organization, you look at a top performer and a mediocre performer that have the same job title, and the research shows that less than 3% of salary differentiates their performance. So that performers that's going above and beyond as a matter of course, they're only getting like 3% more in their paycheck. There's something else that's doing it for them, and it may be, ideally it'd be something in the environment and their manager, but maybe they're very self-driven and they have a lot of pride and they have a professionalism and they have ambition, and they're on it for that reason. But and if you never notice or reinforce that, you will eventually lose it from that person. That person that was done
Yes.
anything for you will then get to a point where they're not going to do anything for you. Oh, I remember someone that was on a management team for uh, I won't mention what city government. He said one day they took a photo of everyone on this task force, this initiative that worked for 8 months on some big thing, and he looked around at all the people that were in the photo with the mayor, and that person never came to a single meeting. That person did absolutely nothing, and he said, just like that, he never took work home again. If that's the recognition you get for busting your butt, I'm in the wrong place, and I'm certainly not going to give it my unlimited energy going forward.
Yeah. We as leaders do tell a lot by how we reward for good, not so good, you know what I mean, and treating everyone equally seems to be like the mantra, and yet it's counterproductive in a lot of ways. I completely agree.
Yes, say it again.
That as leaders to monetarily kind of reward everyone equally the same way, regardless
Yeah.
of effort that the team members bringing forward, I think it's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways.
Yes. I mean, there can be occasions for that, but you can also give everyone the same increase and then still pick out a few people that I know I heard you did this, and the client said this, and so we've got something extra for you, in the bonus. But I had, take the reverse side of this. It's like, well, because we're talking about money, well, of course, money's king, right? I remember sitting next to a plane, sitting next to a person on the plane, and I ended up talking about this type of stuff. And this guy was in first class, and this guy had been a senior leader in several companies, and he told me the story. He goes, what you're saying about money is so true. He goes, I remember I was working at a company, and I got a bonus, and it was a nice unexpected bonus. It was $15,000, and the president of the company handed it to me, and as he handed it to me, he said, "Here's your bonus. Do you think you deserve it?" And he turned and walked away. And the guy was kind of dumbstruck, and he got kind of thinking. He goes, well, "Yeah, I deserved it. If you think I didn't deserve it, we got a bigger problem here." And he quit within 3 days. He said, if I'm working for people that think I don't deserve what you're giving me, then we got a bigger problem, and the problem's you. and I'm going to go find a place that appreciates what I bring to the party. And that's what he did. So sometimes you can have the money and take away it, because
the value,
for the sizzle that comes with the steak, the sizzle was the wrong thing, and it basically didn't matter. It made the money worthless. So the money is not the answer, and that's hard for a lot of people to see. It's a lot in a lot of organizations, and it's hard for upper management to see as well, because as you go higher in the organization, people become a line item in the budget called payroll and benefits, and that's a big number. And you go, well, they should be happy with this. We pay above industry average. If you think that's the end all, you're not going to keep people anyway. So you've got to, how you get upper management into the game is an important question, and it's not an easy question, and there's a lot of different strategies, and you gotta use them all. So this company that I haven't mentioned, but that I'm working with, we work hard on strategizing. How do we get inroads into leadership? So one of the things we did is we picked out 4 executives, 4 vice presidents that we knew were especially good at this people side of the job and stuff. And a lot of times when someone's good at that, other people don't even know what they're doing, because a lot of it's one-on-one and stuff. So we put them on a panel, and I interviewed them, and we invited 300 other vice presidents to come hear it or to dial in virtually. And we talked about, why do you do this? And you run a major portion of the organization, and people respect you. And why do you do this stuff? It takes time, and they said it takes time, but it's the most important thing I do. So that's not the budget, it's not the vendor, the supply chain, it's the people side is the most important side. So whatever time that takes, you take that first. And by the way, a lot of managers who say they don't have time, well, let's look at what you spend your time with, because inevitably you're doing stuff you shouldn't be doing anyway, and maybe you should delegate some of those things.
100%, right.
Delegate to some of your people that work for you as a development opportunity, and not just do it because you've done it the last 3 years. Back out of it and then do something you can delegate to someone else, and that's your one-on-one communication with the people that work for you. So you get people, managers that really, it could be anyone that is so caught up with being busy, and they're not very effective. And so I'm manager, I start with a to-do list, and then my whole day goes sideways because there's crisis and problems and this and that, and you're in the middle of putting them all out. Well, you're in a hole. If you're trying to lead by correcting mistakes and fixing problems, you missed it. You missed it big time. Here's an idea: climb out of the hole and start getting in front of the group and leading the charge. And you do that by systematically reinforcing those people that have done the things that you need them to do, to send a message to everyone else. This is what gets noticed around here. And then you will find out you'll have less and less of your time you have to devote to fixing other people's problems and crises, because people will be doing more of the things that will have success for the group, and which is, of course, reflect on you. So that's what. It's hard for a lot of leaders to see that when they're in the middle of it themselves, and add to that, you can feel important because you're busy all the time. Yeah.
Right, because being busy feels good. Dr. Bob, one of the premier programs that I offer is an engagement program, and I always start with the leadership team, because that is how it actually spreads most quickly through the rest of the organization. And really starting from the top and then working, down into the organization from there. So super
very, very important to do, and especially so because there's so many companies where managers go through programs that executives never did, and it kind of becomes, and they can see things for what they're worth. It becomes do as I say, not as I do. So we're being trained to do this stuff, but they don't have to know this. They don't have to do this. No, they're too important. It's like, and integrity of the whole thing kind of goes down the tubes.
Absolutely. I'm super curious because I look at you as obviously an expert in employee engagement. So how do you personally define employee engagement?
Well, thank you for that question.
You're welcome.
And because I like that question, because I personally defined it as as alignment between personal aspirations and organizational objectives. And I've looked at a lot of definitions, and I'm always kind of wanting, and I kind of came up with this definition because to me it fits. Which means then you got to effectively manage and motivate and engage anyone, you've got to find out as part of that where they're trying to go in their career, what their aspirations are, where they want to be 5 years from now. That's a key piece of the puzzle. and without that, you're not managing them. You're kind of talking to yourself and hoping something sticks. If you find out what's important to them, then, and you keep that information in the back of your mind when an assignment comes up, then you can say, hey, Gary, we got inventory coming up, and I immediately thought of you because you mentioned along the way that you'd like to get into management. This is the key skill set to put you in line for a job like that. And I can't promise you'll be promoted, but I can promise you if you're working for me, I'm going to help get you ready for a promotion that you want. So, I know you're busy now. I expect that stuff to be done. If this isn't a good time, just say the word. I'm not going to hold it against you. Well, you're giving them choice, And so, the fact of the matter, it'll probably take me longer than if I just did it myself. But I thought there'd be good learning for you here. So think it over. Let me know if you'd be interested in this. And one of the guys is going to say, yeah, of course. Thank you for thinking of me. I'd be delighted to do that. And it's going to be more work. And you know what? he's going to get through the rote and mundane parts of his job more easily because of the chance for the visibility of that other project or learning new skills or whatever it might be. It helps to spark the rest of the job. And that's not I tell that story. Sometimes people say, oh, well, you really pulled the wool over his eyes. Nah, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about alignment of personal aspirations with real work that needs to be done. It's not tricking someone into working harder. That's where you have to have your focus on sincere alignment, which means sincerely getting to know and understand someone. And that should be conversation one when they start.
And often it's not, and I don't understand that.
Yeah, it isn't. It's sort of, and in fact, I remember Ken Blanchard worked with Don Shula. They did a book together called Don Shula's The Winningest Coach, but in football history. Don Shula, the Miami Dolphins, recently passed away. Had the only perfect season in national football, 17-0 season, and back in the early 70s, I guess. And they did a book together, and so Ken talked to him about, well, how companies work, and I remember at some points Don was just going, really? He said, tell me that again. He goes, you mean when people start, you don't give them a clear direction from the top about here's what we're about and here's our strategy and this is what we're going to do? Wow. You just have them come in their job and they find that out from the people they're working next to. It's like, he put it in his context. That'd be like me hiring a new player and say, hey, glad you're in the team. Yeah, go talk to people and see what's expected of you. And find out their gripes and their complaints and good luck with it. And because why would you do that? You're handicapping that person and yourself from the get-go. You gotta have a clear message of this is how you fit into the organization and this is what the organization is trying to do. And everyone has to. It was Rosebeth Moss Cantor at Harvard, professor said, no matter what the mission of the organization is, everyone in the company needs to understand why and what that is. And you don't get that by putting it up on the wall or putting the annual report. You get it by talking about it. And hopefully it would be in one of the first conversations. It would be an orientation, and it would be, think about this as you do your job. How do our take core values, which every company has core values, and that's good. But for many companies, they have the core values and they're in the annual report, and they're not living the core values. And so I often just say, you want a test of your core values, just ask employees what they are, and you see them fumble around. And well, I think safety is one of them. I don't know what the other ones are. Well, good luck in that driving anything around here. You want the core values to be something we talk about all the time. And if you recognize people around those core values, they get stronger. Because every time you recognize someone for teamwork, for example, you send a message not just to them, but to everyone else that this is what gets noticed around here. If you do things that encourage teamwork, you're going to be called out in a good way. Okay, I'm doing that. And then it becomes more entrenched, and that the values actually help to drive the mission of the organization, which is the intent, but it doesn't happen by magic. You got to be the leader that makes that connection and walks the talk and talks about it. So I'll give you an example. I worked with MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and they have 14, which is a lot, 14 core values or principles, I think they call it.
That is a lot.
On how they work with people. So every they have a pre-shift meeting for every group in the organization, and they talk about one of those 14 principles, and they have flexibility in how they talk about it. They could be a recent example, or they can go over the policy and discuss it. They can ask questions. They can do it whatever they want, but they focus on principle number 3, whatever that is. The customer's always right, say, for example, and then the next day in the pre-shift meeting, they talk about the next principle. And when they get through all 14 principles, they start over and they do it again. And as a result, they
And again,
systematically bake those principles into, because we're talking about them, and we're calling them out, and we're acknowledging people about them, and man, and it works. So it's not waving a magic wand, it's working. Having a plan and working the plan.
I thank you for sharing that. I do really appreciate your definition of employee engagement. I'm curious if you've seen any trends or concerns regarding employee engagement while we have this remote workforce happening and social distancing happening, and this whole thing. I don't even know what to, like the new whatever.
The new reality.
The new.
Don't forget
What is still working, and
don't forget the whole social unrest aspect as well. So
right,
everything's up in the air.
Compound. So what as leaders in our community, what should we be making sure that we're doing?
Well, the big thing with everyone working at home is that, actually one of the programs I do is on managing virtual workers. I've done that for years, but so it suddenly has a new relevance, and I've been doing virtual training on that. But I find that you have to double down on a lot of the principles that we know work. So recognition. Just because the person in the office doesn't mean you can't recognize them. It means you have to make sure you're reaching out to them. And you could do, by the way, you could do it on a Zoom call too. You can do I've got a lot of bag of tricks, You could do a praise barrage. Ooh, which is a very simple activity. Hey, before we get started here in our meeting, I just want to take a few minutes and go around the group. And as I mention someone's name, I like other people to say what they value about working with that person. 100% positive. Let's start with John. Okay, now Sally. And you take 2 minutes or 5 minutes and you do that. Let me tell you, that's going to be a surge. You just gave a whole bucket of feedback to your people about what's positive from their other co-workers. That just the thought of doing that is going to make it a stronger team. And the things that are called out, if someone hears they're good at something, they're going to become better at that. It's human nature. So, there's a lot of evidence. If you want to improve yourself, don't work on your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths, because things that you're good at, maybe naturally, you could be great at. And that could be defining elements in your life and career, So, wow. But first you got to realize that, you got to know it, and then you got to harness that power. I had give you sometimes I find in talking management theories, talk about kids and parenting. Sometimes it gets clear. I remember our son Danny was in second grade, and we did the parent thing, and the second grade teacher said, Danny's really good at art. And we, we know, he loves art and stuff. They said, no, you didn't hear me. He's really good at art. You need to encourage this. We go, oh, okay then. And so we got an art teacher. And let me tell you, Danny wasn't good. He was great at art. And it's incredible. He won the first kid ever in the school to win two grand prizes in artworks that he'd done. It's like, oh my gosh. So it's like, it's more important to double down on the things that people are good at than to, we're quick to spend time on the things that we're not good at and fix our faults, and and they never quite get fixed. And focus on the things you're good at, or So, and I just think that sometimes I want to tell a kid story when I'm talking to managers. I get feedback from them afterwards. I didn't quite understand what you're saying until you said that, shared that story, and then it all clicked for me. Of course, and whatever helps them see the light. Or I'll tell you one other quick one. I'll try to keep it quick. When Danny was 5, he came home from preschool and he announced he'd like to take piano lessons. Well, my wife and I are we'd never played a musical instrument, and sure, we can do piano lessons, and we and we did that, and then we thought, well, how do we handle this as parents? Do we set up a practice structure? Do we? He's got, when he comes home from school, he's got to practice 45 minutes before, no video games before then. And the more we talked about it, we said, no, that's not good. This is his thing. It's not our thing. It's his thing. So let's get behind his thing. And so we decided that we would never tell Danny to practice. We never once told him to practice. We didn't say, hey, you got your lesson tomorrow. Did you practice? Never did that once. But if we saw him sitting down at the piano, we always said something. Danny, those scales are coming along great. That song, did you pick it out? We know he did. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Get grandma on the phone. We made a big deal out of it. All we got. Within 2 weeks, Danny said to us, could he take piano lessons twice a week? Yeah, sure, we can do that. And so he did, and he got better. He went to 10 levels of classical piano. He got interested in classical guitar. He ultimately went to, he's one of 5 students selected for the guitar program at Northwestern University in north of Chicago. And I tell you, it just kept going. He ended up having private lessons from a master in Italy for 2 summers. He part of his education, he took Arabic, because the classical guitar originates in the Middle East. He told me once that he can hear tonality in the guitar he couldn't hear before he knew the language.
Wow. Yeah.
He spent time in Spain learning the lute, forerunner to the classical guitar. He spent time in Egypt learning the oud, forerunner to the lute. Let me tell you, he's won guitar competitions.
Danny is a world-renowned artist and musician, and
my kid too. Well, I'm just saying, we all have these aspects of our life, and we have those aspects in employees. And people are good at and better at some things than other things. If you treat them all the same, and they all have to be the same standard, you're never going to win. It's going to be painful. It's going to be painful for them, and it's going to be frustrating for you. And I talk to employees that have, it's when you're managed for the things that don't matter, it's very annoying. It's very it's micromanaged on things that aren't important, and it's very frustrating for the employee, which then makes it frustrating for the manager as well. So I don't know, sidestep that one. Instead, focus on what people are good at and help them be great at it. For a coach, that's an important aspect to do.
I've got kind of one final question. Dr. Bob, who was your favorite manager or leader that you ever worked for, and why? How did they bring out that the magic in you, your strengths?
Well, I've been blessed with having some great leaders in my life. I mentioned I worked for did my PhD with Peter Drucker, and that's Marshall Goldsmith, and I worked was Ken Blanchard's the chief of staff, the one-minute manager that sold 14 million copies, and we're all learning from every one we have in our life, and when you have a manager, that's the most important person in the work life for anyone, is the person you report to, and the manager, so that you especially have the opportunity to learn from them. And so let me tell you a Ken Blanchard story. I was the vice president for his company for 6 years, but before that I was the chief of staff. So I spent a lot of time with Ken. At one point he told me I knew him better than anyone else in his life. And so a lot of time with him, talking about a lot of things, and I was always, I'd drive him to the airport, and I'd be with him when he's packing, and when he's coming home, I pick him up, and we're always processing what's going on, and challenges and problems, and what's new, and that type of stuff. I'd go over his correspondence. I'd answer. So I noticed one time he was gone for a trip for 3 months, and we're talking And then he asked me about my life. He remember he asked me about my son Danny. So a third thing about Danny, so piano, guitar, or artwork, piano, guitar. And here's the third thing. Danny, at the time Ken asked me, he was about three and a half maybe. And I said, well, Danny's just going through a phase. He's just crazy about trains. So, just love trains. We go the weekends, we go on a train ride somewhere, And so I didn't say much more than that. And Ken's off on this 3-month trip. He comes back, one suitcase the whole time. I don't know how he does that, but I'm with him and he's unpacking. We're talking about stuff, and darn, it's in the middle of our conversation. He pulls out this little wooden train that he picked up in Zurich for Danny. It's like, would have done anything for the guy, because it showed through his actions that he systematically had my best interest and that of my family and that of my career at heart. And it made it really, really hard to leave working for him. Actually, I worked for him for 10 years and had 5 different jobs, and each one of them was created for me. He'd say, Bob, you know what we're trying to do here. How do you think you can best add value? And well, what the company really needs is this. Okay, can you do that? Yeah, I could take that on and I'd go do that, And so it helped me grow. But it was a good front row seat from a world leader as to this is how you operate when you're trying to make a difference.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to point out to our listeners that what you've just shared had a family component that wasn't about you. It was about him listening and doing something nice for your child. I think that's awesome. And then obviously an awesome, career with him as well. But the story you shared was not about you at all.
Yeah, I guess not. Or yeah, or another time, tell a second story. I could tell you 100, but I remember, mentioned my wife's birthday, and so the day came up, 4 months later, and he called, and well, Jen's not here now. He called 5 times on that day until he got her live to tell her happy birthday. And he's running a company, and he's got his own family, yet that was important to him.
Yeah.
So it says something about the person.
For sure. I am going to wrap this up. Is there anything I didn't think to ask you? I had a whole bunch of questions, and our conversation just went where it was.
Yeah.
Anything that you were hoping to share with our listeners today? Any final thoughts?
No, I've enjoyed this. I don't get a chance to talk about this a lot. On the stuff that I write and research and teach about, at the heart of it, it's common sense, but common sense is not common practice. You have to work at it. So you have to look in the mirror, and you've got to say, am I doing these things, or what would it take for me to start doing those, and make it a priority that no one else can do it for you. So I would leave anyone with that thought, that and I think the other thing, I'm doing a book on fun at work. Work made fun gets done, and I think
the only kind to have.
You have to enjoy what you're doing, and if you're not, you either have to make it fun, and I got a lot of strategies for doing that, or else you got to go do something else, because if you enjoy something, then you'll naturally get better at it. If you don't enjoy it, you could be in pain, and then when you're not at work, you're complaining about work. That I learned from Marshall that the average employee spends 15% of their time at home complaining about their boss. Research statistic: 15% of the time complaining about the boss. So if you're in that bucket, it's never too late to get out of it and make a
My husband would say I complain about myself too. Like I go home and complain about the boss.
Well, you haven't complained about him once since we've been talking, so that's good.
Oh, that's great. What is the best way for listeners who want to connect with you? Where's the best way to send them? Where to send them?
Well, I've got, like everyone, I got a website,
Okay.
www.drbobnelson.com,
I will make sure that's included in the show
DRBOBNELSON.com.
notes.
Yeah, and that's I've got all my books there too, which I've probably 20 books or so that I sell at
Oh, so I
discounted
have
prices.
18 to buy. I have 18 more books to buy.
At least. In fact, I'm just hearing you talk. There's one I want to send you, so I'll do that as a thank you if I get your
Oh,
address.
that is huge. As a matter of fact, if you do end up doing that, I would love for you to please sign it.
Okay.
And then I like to do these as gifts for my upcoming Deliberate Leader Summit that I'm doing hopefully in the fall. And I will do that as a from the stage, and I'll give you kudos.
Well, great. I will do that. Then I need to send you some extras because the one I send to you is for you. So if
Awesome.
you want to give some away, that's your prerogative. But just based
Beautiful.
on what you said, I thought of several ones that you didn't mention that I think would really resonate with you. So
Fantastic. Well, I'm forever grateful for that and for your time here today. It's truly been a pleasure. And I look forward to all the things that you bring forward into the future, into this world, in this arena. And I'm really looking forward to your fun book.
well, thank you. It's about a year from now it'll be out. Books take
Okay.
a lot of time. I don't know. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, writing a book, and somehow I've managed to do 30. So go figure. But
Well, maybe I can do a recap. Maybe we can do a new interview once that book has rolled out and we can do a promotion for it.
I love that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob.